Good evening, everyone. We are all here for our first committee of the whole meeting with our new mayor, Mayor Kuda down there at the end. And I'm Gail Larson. I'm currently serving as president until December. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And so Addie, please take the roll.
Cobb.
Here.
Petrus.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Russell. Here. Posh.
Here.
Before we begin, I ask for some personal time. I would like to say I have two requests for everybody here. And I would like you to keep in mind two things. Number one, we owe each other the public respect that we deserve. We owe each other and the public respect. With respect, our meetings will stay focused and we can get all the work done that we've got to get done. So I'd ask for the respect that we all share for each other and also be applied to our citizens. Number two, I would ask, because there are a lot of campaigns going on represented at this table. So if you refrain from making campaign statements, I'd really appreciate it. Again, we have a lot of work to do, and focusing on that work will benefit us and our citizens. If you are asked during public comment, like you were last time, for your opinion as a candidate, I would ask that you just talk to that person after the meeting or get their information and reach out to them the next day.
I didn't think they were asking as a candidate. I thought they were asking as a council person. So that was my understanding.
Yeah, I thought I heard them say that if you were mayor, what would you do about the situation? So we just have to be really cognizant of the fact that we're here for meeting of council. So Director Hannah has just joined us, and at this point, I need somebody to make a motion to move us into executive session, please.
I lost the language.
Sure.
I got it. I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance as necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project.
So move. Second.
Second.
Cobb.
Aye.
Petrus.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
Posh.
Yes.
Thank you, we are back. Out of executive session, and I'd like to continue with our agenda. Next, we have legislative review. So the first ordinance on our agenda this evening is ordinance number 193-2025. First reading, an ordinance to amend certain subparagraphs of ordinance number 011-2025 relating to appropriations and other expenditures of the city of Freedom Heights, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025. And declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as emergency measure. Discussion on this, please, from council. Good. Okay, I'm gonna move on then.
All right.
Resolution number 194-2025, first reading, resolution authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, more fondly known as NOACA, for a grant under the Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative, TLCI, implementation grant program to fund phase 3 of the Taylor Road Corridor Road reconfiguration, and to accept and enter into any agreements related to the grant program, and declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Any discussion? Go ahead.
No discussion about this, but I thought, just putting it out there, I don't expect us to have this discussion tonight, but has there been any conversation at all about the discussion they're trying to have about NOACA and kind of removing its authority to do a lot of what's doing right now? I know that discussion's at the state. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just curious if there's something.
I've only heard of it, but not
Okay.
been asked to do anything.
Okay. I just know we have so many projects and things were happening. I was just curious if there was anything bubbling up. Okay, that was it.
We're good? All right, moving on to ordinance 196-2025, an ordinance amending section 140.02, members of chapter 140, did I miss something? No, 195. Oh, yes, thank you. A resolution supporting and authorizing the mayor to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Land and Water Conservation Fund for a grant under the program, and to accept funding if awarded for the Attleboro-Shelburne Trail for the Doan Brook Restoration Park Improvements Trails Project, and declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Go ahead, Councilor.
Ms. Knittel, I know you're kind of leading this. If you don't have the answer tonight, that's fine, but this, from what I understand, is our share in what we're doing for Horseshoe Lake. Is that correct, or is this different?
No, this is, you're exactly right. So in this application would be a joint application with the city of Shaker Heights for this Attleboro-Shelburne Trail, which connects the two cities.
And our total budget for this is about 2.5 million, or at least that's
For the entire park.
for, Horseshoe Lake. We don't know about Lower Lake. Correct.
This part.
Okay. And if we at Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, we get the grant, we just share 250.
The maximum grant amount is $150,000.
Okay.
ODNR would not allow us to send in separate grants. They said it was one part, one application. So.
Got it. Okay.
And this is identical to the one we submitted last year. It was not funded. In talking with them, they wanted to see the environmental reviews further along, which of course is this year. So it'll just be tweaked a little bit to address any concerns last year and then we submitted.
Great. Thank you.
And we'll see this in the 2026 budget. Anybody else? Okay, now I'll move along to 196-2025. Ordinance amending section 140.02, members of chapter 140, Cleveland Heights Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee of the Codified Ordinances of Cleveland Heights. Also declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Mayor Kuda, do you want to speak to this, please?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's important that if, any mayor has the flexibility to have an alternate, if, the person can't be there, you don't wanna, if the position became vacated or, just the person wasn't there. There's nothing in the legislation that allows the mayor to send a substitute person. It's pretty standard language to have or designee. And I would add the same for the next piece of legislation, same rationale.
I also appreciate that because we have been without a vice chair in transportation mobility since the city administrator resigned. And that's been difficult. So if we could have had a designee sent in to help us out with those meetings, that would have been much better.
And I don't know that that's the best use of the city administrator's time either.
Exactly.
So, but I want to make council feel comfortable that I definitely plan on having a designee there. That from staff. We're not going back to where staff doesn't participate in these committees.
Yeah, I appreciate that
Sure.
clarification. Go ahead.
This is
Councilor
about,
Maddox.
this is about the next piece of legislation.
Transportation Mobility Committee.
Yes, I just wanted to open up to the floor if the committee, if the council was okay with that, combining the conversation and discussion for resolution 199, 200, 201, and 202 into one discussion if it helps, since they're all adding new members to those committees. I
Well,
didn't know if that would help at all.
in this case, I think these two are two separate issues in terms of we're talking about changing a statement on the actual codified ordinance for these two.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay?
And I just want to thank Mayor Kuda for actually putting that in there, because you and I have had some similarities with no designee. So I appreciate you looking ahead and putting that in there.
I totally agree. All right, I'm gonna move on to 198, which is a resolution appointing Matt Alden as an alternate member of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, declaring necessity this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Everybody's okay? This is the work of Counselor Cobb, by the way. So he's getting a lot of these positions filled in, I appreciate that.
Madam President, if I could just comment that we did vet these people in the Administrative Services Committee, and then if everyone will recall, we discussed all of them again in a committee of the whole meeting. These were all done in executive sessions in case the public is wondering. And we did attempt to hit all the diversity buttons possible within the pool of applicants that we had.
Thank you. Council Maddox?
Just to piggyback on that, number one, I wanna say thank you because this was a lot of work, but for the public watching, I've just mentioned briefly the work that this council has done to diversify those, and you're responsible for a lot of that. I just want the public to know he is indeed absolutely correct. We're all at that table having a conversation about each and every one of these, and discussing a variety of issues, but also making sure that there's a variety of voices at that table. And so if you're looking at this, you'll notice that this is a wide range of people and a wide range of voices from across the community, and it shows that indeed that conversation. And so I just wanted to confirm for everyone on this side of the table as well that we absolutely had that conversation about each of these candidates and what they bring to these.
Thank you. All right. Next one is 199-2025, a resolution appointing Adam May, Casey Friedland, Illy Massey, Lorna Rudolph, and Valerie Ross as members of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the City of Cleveland Heights, and declaring the necessity of this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. All right, these are all what we're talking about, these appointments, so bear with me really quickly. A resolution appointing Ann Selchich as a member of the Landmark Commission of the City of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Resolution number 201-2025, resolution appointing Patricia Smith, Wanda Owens, and Colleen McGowan as members of the Commission on Aging of the City of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. And the last one in this section, 202-2025, a resolution appointing Peter Whiting to fill an unexpired term as a member of the Climate and Environmental Sustainability Committee of the City of Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and declaring necessity this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Mayor Fuda.
Just out of curiosity, Sesk, does that fill that committee? Is that committee full now?
Which one?
202.
I think we still have one
Yes, you do.
more vacancy that will need to get
Yes.
filled. So I'll revisit that in my next Administrative Services Committee.
It happened right as we were finishing up that appointment for this particular person, yeah. You okay, Mayor Fuda?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Hang on a second. Resolution 24-2025. Patty, why don't I? 203-2025, we're changing the order
Yes, sorry, guys.
this evening so that we can do the memoriam for Bill Hanovan at the beginning of the meeting. His family's coming in, a couple of grandchildren, and so 202-2025 is the memoriam for Bill Hanovan. I hope everybody's okay with that. All right. 204-2025, resolution recognizing October 2025 as sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, SUDEP Awareness Month, and declaring necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. And now to 205-2025, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with the Coventry Village Special Improvements Direction District, which is called Coventry Village SID, for advancement of funds to cover a 3% increase that was not added to the assessment, but had been previously approved through the SID process. Now, I'm just putting those words in there, and declaring the necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Councilor Maddox.
Thank you. I'm sure you got the same feedback I got. I know we got several emails. I've got some phone calls. So if there's anything that the staff could do to help explain this in terms of what we're doing tonight, in no emergence, I think would be helpful. This is a good time to do that just since we're live now. Since there was questions about that and what this is and looks like in terms of that, the difference as we're going through this process. I don't know if that will be helpful during this or not, but.
Letting them know it's a reimbursement.
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Anderson on this one. I'll ask finance if I get anything wrong to correct me. Essentially, what happened was, going all the way back to the beginning of the year, the county completely forgot to put on the Coventry Village assessment on the tax bill, right? So we contacted them, they said, yes, our mistake, we're gonna add it on, we're gonna just have to do the double assessment for the second half tax bill. Now, what they neglected to do in the Coventry Village plan that was passed previously is they built in a 3% increase each year. So they just cut and pasted the assessment from the first year and forgot the 3%, which that 3% is going to be reflected in next year's tax bills to catch up.
Correct.
But the Coventry Village SID requested if we would advance those funds since that was the budget amount approved and what they had been approved for this assessment anyway. So this was basically just getting them caught up to what had been approved, but through various, things that didn't happen and was not collected.
Thank you. The reason,
Oh, I was gonna ask, is it a reimbursement or an advancement?
It's in advance.
That will be reimbursed.
and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I know council had discussed it and staff had, but because of the residents, I figured it'd be a good time to just make sure that it was out in the open there. One of the things that I know that President Larson discussed is finding a way to communicate things like this when they come up online or on social media or something when council's working through this so that they can see the difference. But I know in this particular case, with all we have going on, I just wanted to make sure that we communicated that to the residents, what was happening in that, and the fact that the staff is still working through Noble Road Merchants, and that this is a different situation from that, so.
Well,
thank
It's
you.
also for an established SID that we don't wanna punish at
Right.
this point. Were the merchants or were people made aware of this situation so they know that next year that is gonna hit their taxes? Has there been communication about that?
And the property owners who participate in the SID, they have been known just through the conversations at the SID
Okay.
level that that is happening. Now, not if everyone, I don't know if every property owner is paying attention to that conversation or not.
Would you do me a favor and check with them to see if they can send us some kind of notification, because I'm thinking about myself. If I didn't get the word that I wasn't charged for $5,000 on this year's taxes, but I owe it next year, I better be reserving that. So I'm concerned
Now,
about.
that is $5,000 spread across whatever it is, 20 properties.
Right,
So,
I get that, but
but agree, we'll make sure that I'll
I think it would
get
be-
that notice out.
build a relationship even more. Counselor Posh.
Are there any conflicts with this, with any of our members?
Yes.
Counselor Codd.
For Coventry,
Coventry SID.
I'm not on the Coventry SID board.
Okay. Mayor Kuda.
I am, and the only, I could just tell you that what I told them is, because they're having an annual meeting, I let them know that I would certainly be willing to be, they asked me if I'd go back on the board, and I said I'm willing to do that, but that I wouldn't be able to participate until January. So, I don't know if anybody's uncomfortable with that, let me know.
Let me weigh in on that before the law director, and this is a conversation we need to have. Under the Ohio Revised Code, the mayor or the mayor's designee is a member of the board of directors of a SID. Under the statutorily. So Tony, if he wants to, as the mayor, could continue to serve on the board. The Ohio Revised Code also provides that the legislative authority may have an appointee serve on a SID. Traditionally, there has been a council member that has been fulfilling that role on SIDs. There is no prohibition against a council member serving on a SID board. In fact, for the city of Cleveland Downtown Special Improvement District, their council president, Glenn Griffin, sits on their board.
Can I ask a question about?
Before you do, I'm gonna let you go ahead.
But what does apply is the normal, ethics rules. So for example, if a council member owns some property in that SID, that would be a conflict of interest. If somehow they had a company that was doing business with that SID or was contracting with the SID, that would be a problem. And what a council member should do is refrain from voting on any matters that impact a SID financially.
I think that this is a conversation that we can have another day or time, but real quick question.
Which is why we definitely can't discuss this then now. But my question for you was, as you were reading this and researching it, is there any benefit for our involvement in all of the SIDs? I guess instead of moving it away, should we be more involved in all of our associations and SIDs that way in terms of one representative or any? That's just something I'm putting out there because I'm sure there is benefit to that in a way. So I was just curious if that would even help lift up what we're trying to do on Noble. And so I'm just wondering if that's the route to go. So I would love to have that conversation. I don't know what committee, but if this is something that I think would benefit all of, maybe that is part of the issue and a solution for even Noble is that we activate that there. I don't know if that'll help. So.
If I could, and I'll be brief. I just think the purpose of the Ohio Revised Code enabling both the mayor and the city council to have a representative on that SID is to in fact protect the interests of the city and to serve as a liaison between that organization and city government.
Yeah, I think that's about great point.
One question.
Vice President?
Is, would a staff person be considered a designee? Because I know on the Fairmount SID, aren't you on there as a designee? So are you on there as in any
Yeah, at
other
various
SIDs?
points, I think that's the only one.
That's the only one you're on?
That a staff person, either planning or economic development, generally for over various periods of time served as the mayor's designee. Because we're going to those meetings anyway.
Right, okay.
Mayor Kuda?
So I'm just assuming, Councilman Cobb, that there is no such statute when it comes to merchants associations.
That's correct, but I would defer to the law director, and the law director may have a different opinion than what I just commented on in respect
That
of
was
what
gonna be my
the
next
Ohio
question.
Revised Code allows and provides for.
So this evening, we're talking about a SID, so
Yes.
we'll keep that conversation in mind, correct, Director Hannah and Mayor Kuda?
So,
Yeah.
if I could, I think the councilman generally correctly described the provisions of the ORC. I would note that it's the mayor or economic development employee designated by the mayor typically, or a person appointed by the legislative authority, which does not mean a member of the legislative authority. So I just wanted to draw that distinction. It doesn't exclude a member of the legislative authority either. But you do, as this council has seen over the last couple of years, run into conflict questions on a somewhat regular basis that confuse everybody every time they come up. And so it's worth working through, as has been discussed a bit in the past, I think in a fuller way. It's also true that if the SID is a previously existing nonprofit corporation, then those rules don't apply, and it's the board of that nonprofit corporation that serves as the board of the SID. But to Councilman Cobb's point, the ethics rules and the conflict concerns arise whether you're under 1710 strictly speaking and you have a member of council involved or a mayor, or you're talking about a nonprofit corporation in which one or more members of council are members. You still have the same questions every time a request for funding comes up, a request for an advance comes up. So I think what council will want over time to work through is what works best for the city, and then what works best for the SIDs.
Very quickly,
So
please.
if I could, regarding Councilman Posh's question, could you clarify, do you see any issues here?
For tonight's purposes, I think it would be easy to change. I think the sponsor is currently Mayor Kuda. So
Change the sponsor.
he would not in any way, he would not be voting in any event at this point, but he would also need to be recused from the discussion. He wouldn't participate if this goes before council for discussion and action with his name on it as sponsor.
What does that mean for this evening
By
then?
the way, whether his name's on it or not, he wouldn't be participating in the discussion. So you can change it or you can leave it.
What's the
If we
opinion
leave
of
it,
the
it's
council?
okay.
It's okay, yeah.
So there are no issues.
I still think that change it.
Just change the sponsor, you can sponsor it, President.
Well,
It's still moving forward, it's just keeps it clean,
He's saying there are no issues though.
it's perception.
There was an appearance issue raised
Yeah.
today.
What's happening?
That's not the same as a legal issue.
It's appearance.
If
Trying
you're
to keep you safe.
concerned, I'd be more than happy to sponsor it. And anybody that would wanna join me is more than happy to jump on.
so let's do it that way. I'd be happy to join you. So we start, let me just change the name on the sponsorship.
Just put
So
everybody's
please
name.
raise your
Yeah.
hand if you'd
I'm
like to join.
Everybody's name.
Okay,
Right, I'm gonna move on. Ordinance number 206. So when you read it, Addie, by the way, you read it as introduced by the folks that just raised their hand. I'm gonna read the next two ordinances together because they are a package that we've all been waiting for. First one is ordinance 206, 2025, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a grant agreement with Friends of Mendelssohn in the sum of $750,000 and a waiver of city permitting fees up to $250,000 in order to fund trails, walkways, sidewalks, site lighting, and landscaping improvements to the real property located at 3300 Mayfield Road, permanent parcels. The numbers are in the legislation and more commonly known as the Park Synagogue campus, and declaring necessity of this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. I would also like to include in that ordinance number 207, 2025, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Park Synagogue Borrower LLC for a commercial development loan in the sum of $750,000 to fund improvements to the real property located at 3300 Mayfield Road, permanent parcel numbers, 3 of them listed in the legislation, and more commonly known as the Park Synagogue campus, declaring the necessity of this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Our staff, the economic development staff and our law department, and most recently Mayor Kuda, have worked very hard on these two pieces of legislation. I am totally in support of them and I am in support of this project. So if anybody else wishes to comment, Councilor Maddox.
I'll just ditto what you just said, amazing work on this project, 100% in support of it, excited to see it go through, and I will be voting yes on this.
Ditto.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'll just reserve my comments to the public meeting.
That's great. Thank you, Councilor Cobb. Appreciate that. Second readings. All those previous are gonna be we've been asked to vote on this evening, so that's a long list of votes. Second readings, ordinance number 175-2025. Second reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a real estate purchase agreement for the sale of 46 vacant residential lots located within the city to Future Heights Inc. and declaring the necessity of this legislation become effective as an emergency measure. I'm also gonna lump in for this discussion ordinance number 176, 2025, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a real estate purchase agreement for the sale of 19 vacant residential lots located within the city to YRM Corp. and declaring the necessity of this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Vice President Russell, you had these two pieces of legislation in your committee meeting, so what was the conclusion from the committee?
To move forward now. Thank
Okay, all right.
just wanna point out, it's 45 lots, not 46. That was there was a duplicate lot in the one for Future Heights.
Oh, on the
So it's 45.
exhibit,
Yep, so it's 45, not 46.
would
So
you
you know, it's
mention
being-
that when you read it?
Sure. I'm gonna change it to 45 when I read it.
I didn't see that on yours. All right, so anybody, Councilor Maddox?
Just wanna thank them for the work. I'm excited to go out there and speak more to this, but I just wanna say thank you for this. I'm not quite sure if the community realizes what's about to happen with these, but just based on what I've already seen these organizations do, driving through other areas, this is gonna be great, and so I'm excited for the city.
I think the idea that it's so many lots that
Yes.
we're looking at seeing a change on is it's going to be an evolution for those neighborhoods.
The patience of both sides getting to this point.
This is unbelievable.
Okay. Resolution 184-2025, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Cuyahoga County for funding through the home program for the city's affordable housing programs through December 31st, 2025, and declaring the necessity of this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. I don't see, you're the person we can ask a question of?
Yes.
All right, I would assume that Future Heights will be taking advantage of this money?
So this is the contract between the city and the county so that we can then use the funds locally, and that's one of the potential uses.
Go ahead, Councilor Maddox.
Just a question for you. Have you had any conversations with the county or anyone around the state about next year and what these funds might look like? I know there's some cities that are nervous, and I didn't know if you heard anything.
I think this falls into that bucket of all federal funds, and so
Uh-huh.
everybody's a little nervous about all of
There's a lot of conversations that even when things open back up, that this might take a severe hit anyway. So I'm really, really glad that we're jumping on this now. This is something I'm watching carefully just because of how it's used, so thank you.
All right, closing off that section of the agenda, the next point of discussion, it's not a discussion, I'm just gonna make, issue an announcement. As committee assignments, I'm honoring Councilor Maddox's request to become a member of the Planning and Development Committee, filling the vacancy created when President Kuda moved over to be mayor. Vice President Russell will continue as chair, and Councilor Cobb will continue as vice chair. Additionally, Councilor Posh has stepped forward to be acting chair of the Finance Committee, since I currently chair two committees and have this responsibility. So I appreciate him willing to do that. Councilor Maddox will continue as vice chair, and I will remain as member on that committee. The council vacancy assignments, we have 3 that I've seen. Are there any more than that, Eddie?
Oh, I think there's 4, maybe 5.
We'll be accepting applications until the 10th at midnight, so as a body tonight, I'd like to have you let me know what your wishes are, if we want to have a special meeting next week to talk about the applicants, or if we wanna put it on the 20th, so,
We have 5.
great, okay, I am missing 2.
I'm missing one.
I'm gonna put together an entire packet that just has
On the
everything in
10th.
one.
When it's all done.
Yep, when it's all said and done, I'll put everything together.
Thank you. Go
I
ahead.
thought we placeholder to have some meetings next week about this.
Yes, I was
Look at it
going
this
to
weekend
pull up
and
the
then-
doodle.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Eddie?
Yeah.
I'm pulling up the doodle.
Addie's pulling up. She's getting ready to cuss me out.
Yeah, 2 of you guys.
I was hoping that wouldn't come up tonight.
No, I thought we did it.
Okay, what about does October 15th? So I have October
It's a
15th.
Jewish holiday.
Is it?
Well,
That's what I was told by Jessica Cohen last night. So yeah,
that seems to be the only one where we would have anywhere close to a quorum.
Is it executive session though?
it probably will be, yes. Yes, we'll be talking about the applicants, possibly interviewing if we decide to do that.
But then we can't interview
for me.
if we're.
There is another, I don't know, Bill, tell me if this is unusual. In order to do this, if we don't have a full quorum of council, is it possible to send this to admin services? Because the quorum is smaller, and then if people can zoom into that, the rest of council, and do it that way, so we can have that meeting, or is that not something?
You can't meet virtually right now as a body, and so, yeah, theoretically, you could have a committee meeting. If that's gonna move the ball forward.
I'm just, cause we only need 3 people then, so.
Councilor Petrus,
So how many people do we need for quorum?
4.
4.
Okay, so it looks like based on the doodle, it says that there are 3 and 1 if needed at 4:30 on Tuesday, the 14th.
Oh, it does look like you did say if needed. I was trying to avoid it.
Oh, that was,
And then there's also Wednesday at 11 a.m. where there are 4 people.
That's the 15th.
That's the 15th.
Yes, the 15th. So there are 3 times it
We're
looks
trying
like.
to avoid the 15th though.
so that
Well,
would be the 4th.
Is there a conflict, Councilor
that-
Posh, for you?
On the 15th?
Yeah.
No, not at all, and I believe there would be a it's after sundown, we'd be having any meetings, so I don't think it would really affect us at all if we had an evening meeting. If it's an executive session, a public session, we may wanna think otherwise.
I was just gonna ask what the,
Would it
Would
impact
the
the applicants'
intention is-
kids though?
I guess do you wanna discuss the applicants before inviting people in? Or do you wanna try to invite people in that day? I guess that's really the point.
Maybe at this point, we should invite them and then have the full discussion, I'm thinking, just to save
Then I
the
would say
time.
you would want to avoid that date.
Yeah, I would agree with that, just based on,
So the 14th? I don't know.
yeah, at least the 14th at what time?
4:30 to 6.
4:30 works for you?
We have a,
For me, I don't get
Oh.
I'm at work.
The finance committee meeting starts at 6.
Okay.
We could do 4:30. How many could do 4:30 on Tuesday the 14th? Is our schedule okay?
But that's
that a
actually,
holiday?
that's actually the holiday though, that's,
Yeah.
that's the actual.
So before sundown is okay.
If you finish before sundown, if that's your intent.
We would be done. We would be done by,
For-
we have to be done by 6.
Well, let's pick another date because I can't be there at 4:30.
Say, so we have to push it out.
The meetings
and
are-
folks.
these are executive sessions, so the public isn't gonna be attending and we're not gonna be asking anybody to participate other than ourselves.
Well,
And the
unless you're,
applicants, we'll
unless
bring
you're
the app-
asking the
Applicants
applicants
to
in.
come in, yeah.
Well, I think we need to have a discussion amongst ourselves
Yeah.
first before we'd invite anybody in, and I think that would be another meeting
That's
at
true.
another date. So this is, I believe, a meeting that is just for council members
Mm-hmm.
under executive session
To discuss.
To do
to discuss the applicants that we've got in. And I think the outcome of that meeting may or may not determine if we would invite people in
That's true.
at another date.
That's true.
But we still don't have a date to at least begin that.
We have the
And
15th.
I'm just asking with the, if it's still at 5, you don't think it's worth just doing all 5 and then having the discussion? You think it's still just to have discussion to see if there's, anyway, we just know we don't wanna, I'm just asking just to move it along, cause
I
how
like that.
difficult it was to schedule this is why, I wouldn't suggest it if it was way more like typically.
Right.
But I think with 5, I think bringing them in, it might help, because I don't know when we'll be able to have that next meeting just based on how things are going. And that's the only reason I'm asking. I mean, I'm definitely understanding, because that's how we did it before, but if it was, like I said, if it was more than 5, I don't think it could work, but I think it could work with 5. And then we just discuss all 5, unless there's someone we're positive we wouldn't wanna.
I would let our president make that choice. Either one is fine, but either direction is fine by me.
Vice President Russell can't be here at 4. So I'm looking at the 15th.
I have. On the 15th, the other option would be 11.
Council.
Was everybody available on the 15th?
The 15th from 3:30 to 5, everyone except for you two,
I'm okay for the 15th.
but it's 3:30 to 5. You're okay for the 15th?
I can't do 3:30.
You just
but I
said
have to-
11.
Right,
Yeah.
so if you can do 11, then that would be. Could you make that, then it would be everyone except for.
But then
If
he-
if I could, so Seth, did you say sundown on the 14th to sundown on the 15th?
Is the house.
So 11 AM on Wednesday, if we wanted to invite
It's on
people
the
in,
holiday.
would not work.
It's on a
Yeah.
holiday.
The HR person, could I ask one more? I'm sorry, I'm starting hot, but I'm just trying to figure out how to do it quick and still get it all out. Is there a way that we could send them out, since there's only 5 candidates, those questions, and maybe even have them just answer those or do a video and go back and review, so we're having only the discussion that night? That way they can do it during our time, we give them a deadline and return them, and then we're having this conversation without pulling them in, and then we're spending the whole night having conversations about those. And if there's someone that we wanna talk to, maybe we do follow-up questions, or then bring those folks in, but the meeting is shorter. And I know we like having that face-to-face conversation, but we've agreed on the questions for everyone. We've done the videos, and then I even think for transparency purposes, we could even post those for the public to see what we reviewed and what we asked, so that way they see what we're making our decisions based on. But it allows us to have that time, sit with those videos, much like we did with the applicants, and then only dedicate that time to discussion, which I think would cut down all of that. I know it's not ideal, but it allows us to still knock it out in one day, but get all of the information we wanted from the candidates.
Do
And
you
it also
still-
makes sure that they're all getting the same questions.
Do you still have those questions, Addie?
And remember, this is only the 6th. You don't know how many more people may
Right.
apply until the
Right.
10th.
I think
They're
we-
somewhere.
We need to get our first meeting scheduled. So far, I'm not hearing when we can all make it.
Right now, the 3 top choices. First choice, most people, Wednesday, 3:30 to 5, the 15th. Second option, Wednesday, 11 to 12:30. Third option, October 14th, which is Tuesday, 4:30 to 6.
So there's no options
Council
outside of the 14th and the 15th.
If I could, so there were only a few dates in the doodle for us to choose from. Might like Monday the 13th, the evening after the housing and municipal services meetings work? Because I suspect that many of us will already be here, and that's in the evening after we'll all be out of work.
7:30, October 13th.
I can make mine an hour, yes. Everybody okay with that?
Especially if it's an initial discussion.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you will be there, I'll be there, I know you will be.
Yeah. And besides this, at the beginning of the week, so if we need to do the
More
next step, we could do the next step.
And it's still, I still.
Monday the 13th?
Yes,
Columbus
that's your-
Day. Isn't it?
we have a
Yes,
public
it is.
safety and health meeting and a
Goodness.
municipal
Yeah, so
services
there's
meeting,
there's housing
or housing committee meeting.
Housing at 5:30 and municipal services at 6:30.
City
Is that a, is that a city holiday?
City holiday.
No?
Not,
Okay,
Oh, damn, my
okay.
That's good, I like that.
So Monday,
I use my outside
Councilor
voice there.
Posh,
You should proceed. The only hiccup for me personally is I'm landing San Francisco at 6:28, and I'll get here as quickly as I can.
all right, so I think
The
that's what we're
13th.
gonna, yeah, that's what we're gonna
The
do.
13th.
If I could make one other suggestion, so we were talking about the possibility of if there are more than 5 applicants, maybe having a second date, something like that. So is there anything wrong with the evening of the 16th? Are there any holidays that evening? Because heard
I
that
can't
the
do the 16th.
I can't do the 16th either.
the 17th, Friday the 17th, just so that we can get something on the calendar? We need just
I mean, I
4
can do that.
people.
This goes back to, I didn't wanna rock the boat again, but again, if a committee gets us there, gets us a quorum, to at least start that conversation so everyone else can zoom in, I still think I'm open to that. If it just gets to the point where we can have a meeting and everyone else, any of those dates, if it's not a fact that someone can be in the building physically, but if they can dial in and we can still do that, I still think we can pull it in admin services, unless we don't have the body there to do it.
Counselor Cobb, could you see a way forward in that next week? For an admin services after we've had the meeting on Monday?
Who else is on admin services?
just Jim.
Oh, that's right, because the mayor's the other seat.
But that's a quorum, that is a
That is a
quorum.
Are you envisioning that's where we would interview people?
We
if
could,
necessary?
at least just to get
Okay.
it scheduled, yeah, then work the Zooms through
Could.
there.
And
To avoid-
what day would you like to do that?
I'm looking at you for a date that's convenient for you.
I could do any evening next week, and we may need to, yeah, so I could do any evening next week.
Do you want
Counselor
to
Petrus?
aim for like Thursday, the 16th?
Is the 20th too late?
I
Well,
mean,
that's our
we would
meeting
wanna
then.
vote on them then.
Yeah.
On the 20th, yeah.
Oh, that is.
I can do in person the 16th or online, that works for me, if that helps. I
Counselor
mean, I know I'm
Posh?
not on admin, but
Okay, so I'm out of town the 16th,
Okay.
and I apologize for that, but don't hold up the meeting on
17th.
behalf of me.
That's a
Can we
Friday.
do the,
Weekend, 18, 19.
I was gonna mention that, cause we
President
did it for
Larson.
charter, if we could do a quick Saturday morning.
Hour and a half
On the
to
18th,
like
and-
11 or something?
And if the candidates might be
Well,
available.
we'd have to double check and make sure
That-
that
that affects
Steve
you
is
guys.
available.
I realize
I'm not.
we need
Sunday.
you, do we need you on Steve?
You don't really need me, you might need Steve, unless he just hits record and then we post them later.
Counselor Cobb?
When are the applications closing?
The
10.
midnight on the 10th,
On Friday.
so we will know on Monday who is in the pot.
I think my preference is to try and do it next Monday, or sorry, next Wednesday or Thursday evening.
Oh, after sundown on Wednesday should work, right? Okay, sundown is at 6:45, okay, 6:47. So we could do 7 on the 15th.
Wednesday.
I can do the 15th. I can do the 15th,
So-
as long as you're after.
It's always
We're
after
just talking
6.
about doing an admin services meeting so we can get the interviews gone.
And
Now,
that's all we're gonna do.
if we're
Right.
just doing executive session on the 15th, that should be okay because we don't need Steve here, but he cannot do Wednesday nights, just so you know.
But he can start it
If you
before
can
leaving.
just start it and
Okay.
go
There
and
wouldn't be
then
anything
put
in
the
this case
record,
to
it wouldn't really do
record, it's
anything
just in
anyways.
and out,
Yeah.
yeah, so that works.
Okay.
So are we saying no
So
to the
7
13th and yes to
PM?
the 15th?
No, no, I
Well,
think
we're
we're
keeping
saying
it both.
Yes.
So the second one is for Admin Services Committee to meet,
And the first one's the special committee of the whole.
yes.
To review
And
the
if-
applications and then to interview.
And if all of us could be there, it don't even, it could be a committee of the whole.
And that's exact, yeah, cause it just works out, and so there's two of you right now?
Yeah,
Could
it's a quorum.
And so, could you temporarily appoint me to the Admin Services Committee as another member?
I will do that.
If
Go
something
ahead.
happens, one we can still have a meeting.
Oh, you say temporary.
Right, we just that way if something happens, one of them gets in a car accident, we can have a meeting.
Council
Like this.
Pash.
So if all the stars align on the night of the 15th and white smoke is coming out of the chimney and we're ready to pull the trigger on somebody verbally, can we vote if there's a minority of council members?
Well, no, we would,
No,
I
no,
can't drink this
You would have to do that on the 20th.
Yeah.
we would do that on the 20th.
To appoint someone,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to on
definitely do that.
public safety
You have to write legislation.
and public safety.
Okay,
Okay.
so say us again what we're doing, Addie.
The 13th from 7:30, I'm gonna say to 9,
I'm here anyway, okay.
that's Monday. And then 7, I'm gonna say to 9 on Wednesday, the 15th for admin services. First one's committee of the whole, second one's admin services,
7:00.
7 o'clock on the 15th.
Okay. All right,
Okay, all right, we're covered, and no matter what, we can do the admin service.
Miss Addie, would you be kind enough to memorialize that in an email?
I sure can, and I'm gonna send out the invites.
and thank you, Councilor Pash, for being, trying to get here as much, don't get enough, don't drive too
Don't get
fast.
in an accident.
I appreciate everybody trying to put up with my crazy life. Thank you.
The last item for this evening's meeting is the council's budget, not the general budget, but the council's budget. So Addie, would you please read off what you have received for requests from council members?
So I haven't received a request this year, however, I have my list from last year. Let's see. We did the extra additional funding for conferences for council members. If you guys wanted to attend, we'll still keep that for next year. We did wanna do some additional funding for the Amazing Women of Cleveland Heights celebration.
Yes.
So maybe we can sit down and come up with a number. I'm not sure what particularly.
I think a couple thousand. is
Couple
what we're
thousand is probably, yep. And then we had talked about doing electrical outlets here in the conference room and in the chambers
Nice.
and all the chairs.
And that's building's responsibility or ours?
So that is technically on the buildings, not building department.
So Mayor,
Facilities. So Mayor Kuka, would you like to add that to your for this
budget,
year?
please, chairs. Plugs.
So that's for everybody.
And then I do have a request of my own that I will pass out.
You never forget yourself, we love
I
it.
don't.
Oh,
I'm
gosh.
passing out a memo I put together for you guys because I'm requesting that you guys budget for a part-time deputy clerk for next year.
Which is where I was headed. So I didn't submit this. I know you and I had conversations in terms of some of the ideas and needing additional staff. And so I didn't put in a request yet because I really wanted to have a broader conversation with council around our goals in terms of support for you, admin support, and specifically around community engagement. Some of the things that President Larson and I discussed are absolutely things that we could do, but definitely not with Addie by herself. To give you a prime example, I alluded to this earlier, is that there are times where the public just simply wants to know where we are in terms of our legislative process or what might have come up. And so we need a place to be able to communicate that consistently, and for us to communicate with the public. That's just not something that Addie can do on her own. And I know Davina and I have been talking about this for years, that we consistently don't have our own voice in terms of what that looks like. And I'll use the example of the City of Cleveland City Council page, even their Facebook page is so robust, and so they can talk about everything from events the council is putting on to where they are in a piece of legislation or even an idea that came out of the committee. There's no place for us to really house that either on the city website or anywhere on social media. So no matter what iteration of council there is in the future, I think that there needs in terms of a public voice, there needs to be some type of stronger voice, because a lot of what we're seeing public upward confusion is because there's not a way for us to really communicate why something's being held up, or where we are in that process, or even where we are in terms of a new idea we're working on. And there's also no way for us to even if we want an instant feedback from the public about something that we're even thinking about, or some of the things that we're doing, like even pictures from the Women's Day events and things like that. And so I think in order to do those things, she would definitely need some type of support. And I don't know what that person looks like or the amount of hours it would take, but I think if we increase our staff, we'll definitely increase number one, our communications and community engagement presence around the city, number one. And number two, it'll allow Addie to think broader about her role and some of the other things we can do from a process standpoint. I think she needs somebody that she can kind of that can be a release valve for that. She can shift some things over to, so we can start talking about some of those larger strategic projects. Because right now, dealing with all of us and having to communicate with the administration and I know finance and the public has always been insane. And so they're seeing her as this funnel. And so I'm saying all that just to say, even if it's something more than that, if you could envision it, I don't know. I just know you definitely need that support. I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, the planning department and I have also talked about taking on a big archival project, so that's gonna involve a lot of different moving parts. And probably would be helpful if I had someone in addition that could kind of liaise between departments in this bigger, broader sense with this particular project, because a lot of it's going to be just going through massive amounts of stuff that we have down in our archives.
Question for you, would that be budgeted to the planning development department rather than to council?
And no, I would say that's more, that would only be a very small portion, I would say, of what the deputy clerk would be doing.
Addie's memo has stated she's looking at 20 to 25 hours, so it's a part-time person, so no medical benefits,
Correct.
correct? And I do think that I know they're revising the webpage, right? They're working on getting the webpage upgraded, updated, and made more user-friendly. So if council had a specific icon on there that people click on it and they can, this particular person, this part-time person could maintain that as bringing up anything that's even the meetings, everything that needs to go on before and after the meetings, the discussions that we have in our committees, the citizens committees that need to be tracked better. And so it's clear what council's really doing. I would like to see that on that webpage. So if that person could also be assigned some of those tasks, I would appreciate it. Go ahead.
And I know you looked at this as a part-time position. One of the things I want to avoid with this that I notice some other cities have is the minute council has this, there's this separation between administrative communications and council, and I don't want that. And so one of the things I was wondering if is some type of hybrid role where they're sharing that community engagement, but there's that connection between those departments, and so that there's not this argument between which is popped up on the city's Facebook page versus council's. So if that person's working, so even if it would help save money by having some type of hybrid role where they're doing more of that engagement as well and they're partnering with you, I don't know what that would look like on the communication side, but anything that we could do so that this person is a part of the overall communications flow and not some standalone voice, because I don't want the public thinking that. I just think there are times where council really wants to make its voice clear in terms of what we're doing, and but there's no clear space for that. And I think any level of transparency they can offer would definitely be helpful. But honestly, I think that I'm open to this being some type of full-time role, even if it's a shared role between departments, so that you have the ability to be able to lean on it and do other things.
Yeah, there are definitely, I've talked to a lot of other clerks in other cities when kind of doing the research for this that have kind of that joint role where there's some that have like their part-time deputy clerk and then their part-time legal assistant, or their part-time deputy clerk and then they work on like the planning commission minutes and all that kind of stuff, so.
Does anybody else have any comment? Go ahead, Vice President Russell.
I just want to thank shake your hand, because I've been telling you this since you've been hired. And I am so happy that you have now come to light to say, I need someone.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot more.
I've been talking about this ever since you've been here. I've been talking about the website, the Facebook page, all of those things that council needs, so
Yeah, I think we needed to get
congratulations.
to a point, but I think we're there, so.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And then I have a couple of asks, go ahead.
And the question isn't for Addie, it's actually for Josie. Just based on what we're saying here, do you see anything problematic about that approach in terms of communications that way? I know you were, I hate to talk about.
I think that would be a question for Director Shantz.
I do have two requests that I sent in, and the one I was looking at was forensic audit of 2024 and 2025. I know we've talked about that. Do we want to commit to it and go ahead and get it budgeted? I don't know what the amount would be, but we're looking at what our budget for the council was for 2025. And it looks like we will have some reserve to carry over. I know they don't like to use that term, but perhaps being able to look at somebody doing forensic audit for at least 2024. So any feedback from anybody? Go ahead.
I would like to get recommendations from our new city administrator and see what she thought if possible.
I mean, that's exactly why I raised my hand.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm glad you said it.
Oh, yes,
I have no
because
problem with you saying it.
I know she's been going through the finances, and I wanted to see what her opinion would be on that, far as what she kind of project through the end of the year. I know that may be a hard question, but
It's not particularly a hard question, but given that this is my third day. And I don't know, I don't know if there were any, signs or something that you saw in trends that make you feel that you wanna, take a closer look at something. But definitely, it can be done. You have to, it's gonna be costly. When you start talking a forensic audit for a city this size. So it would be easier if there were some areas that you wanted to look at particularly that you have some discomfort with, but, we can put together something once you get a sense of, and Mayor Kuda agrees that that's to happen, we can put together something.
maybe we could find out what a forensic audit would cost in whole and in part. And then we'll know basically what it would cost if we move forward with something like that.
City Administrator Dubois, can you help me with that?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Mayor
I was just gonna say, it would be good to shoot the CHUNY report over as well, just so the city administrator could see what we've done so far. Because there were several recommendations in that report, and I had not shared that with.
Addie's gonna send it to you.
Thank you.
I go ahead, on the forensic audit?
On a different topic, sorry.
Okay, on the forensic audit?
Yeah, I mean, usually you're gonna wanna get that out and interview the group that you wanna have do it.
Sure.
And I think we do need to have some basis in order to do that, if that's something we wanna do. And it's pretty unusual that we've been waiting this long for audited financial statements, but that would usually give you some rationale on why we would think that that's needed based on the outcomes, or at least what some of the findings are. So.
For now, I'll work with city administrator and see, it sounds like it's expensive, so, but I would like to get a ballpark figure ultimately, if we can. Also, I'm asking for $50,360 for the composting program for 2026. I've increased it a bit in case we have to have double pickups during a week. If hopefully there's so much compost in one of those bins at one location that they have to come back a second time. That would be a good thing. So I don't know if that last year got put under council's budget by Mayor Sarin, and I wasn't comfortable with that, but that's where we ended up with it. So I guess I'm asking Mayor Kuda, can you recommend an appropriate department for me, please?
I was gonna ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think it would be the council's budget.
Well, that's where it ended up, so.
I know, but that was because it was a budget adjustment at the time. I'm not prepared to answer that question, but I can absolutely go with the finance director and the city administrator and find an appropriate place for that. I mean, I'd like to see that in the budget. I would say that, and then, we'll find it.
Yeah, I sent you both my spreadsheet, which shows the proposal and the detail, and that will give you something that you can take to discussions.
Was it 38,000 this year?
It was 38,160.
And did that actually cover what you thought it would?
Well, it didn't get started until September, so no money actually went out of the city's funds until September, probably October actually, by the time I got invoiced.
I'm sorry, was the 38,000
For a
just
whole
for
year.
the, oh, it was for the whole year, okay.
2025, yeah,
All
for
right.
2
So
locations.
we don't know, it's because we didn't have a whole year. Got it,
There
I
will
got
be
it.
some carryover there as well. Petrus, yes.
I
Councilor Petrus.
have something unrelated to the budget, so if there are any other questions, by all means.
Go ahead.
So
Wait a second, is yours related to the budget? Did you have
No, I
something
was
to say?
telling you he had a question.
Okay.
No,
So I'm pointing at you now, it's your
thank you.
turn.
So there were 2 RFEIs and 2 pieces of legislation we have tonight were a result of those
Right.
processes. I know that there was a communication that was sent out earlier this year about a reboot of the RFEIs. And so I was wondering if any of the staff members might be able to provide an update on that to us.
I guess
Sam is not here.
the only comment is, I think in light of everything that was happening the last month or two, I think we're looking forward to the opportunity to talk with, the new mayor and city administrator, potentially what we've been thinking about what, that looks like moving forward.
Okay with that? All right, anything else for the good of the order? I'd like to adjourn at 7:24 then, so we can go into council chambers.
Good job.